Welcome back to another episode of Uncovering Your Inner Power. I'm your host, Jill Ripley, and today we're talking about what happens to our identity and sense of purpose when the people we've spent years nurturing no longer need us in quite the same way. We often hear the term empty nest, and we picture the last child packing up the car and heading off to college while a mother stands in the driveway trying not to cry. And that certainly may be part of it, but this experience is so much broader than that. It can happen when our children move away, marry, become busy with their own families, or stop turning to us for every answer. It can also happen after a loss, when caregiving ends, when we retire, or whenever a once central role changes. And sometimes there's an unexpected question waiting for us in all that new space. What do I do with myself now? If you've spent years making sure everyone else was fed, supported, encouraged, and generally kept alive, that question can be surprisingly difficult. We become experts on what everyone else needs. Then when someone asks us what we want, our mind goes blank. So today, I want to talk about why this transition can feel so unsettling, why it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with us, and how we can begin reconnecting with the woman underneath all the roles we've played. Looking back, caregiving became a part of my identity long before motherhood. I had lived with my grandmother since I was 2 years old, and when her health declined around the time I was 11, I became her little helper and caregiver. I assisted with her home dialysis and even took her blood pressure. Responsibilities most children that age would never be expected to understand. Then, at 17, I became a mother. For most of my life, caring for others hasn't simply been something that I've done. It has shaped how I understood who I was. I grew into adulthood nurturing others with little opportunity to discover who I was apart from being needed. I think a lot of women can relate to that, even if they became mothers later. Once we begin nurturing a family, it's very easy for our own needs and interests to move further and further down the list. There is always something more important: a ride, an appointment, a meal, a problem to solve, or someone who needs our support. Even when our children are grown, many of us are still mentally keeping track of everyone. We can spend years saying, someday when things settle down, I'll make more time for myself. Then things finally do settle down, and we're not entirely sure what we're meant to do with all that time. That can be so disorienting because being needed gives us a sense of direction. We know our job, where our energy belongs, and whether we realize it or not, that we matter. Then the role changes. Our children solve their own problems, call less often, and create routines that don't always include us. That is normal and healthy, but it can still sting. We can be proud of the independent adults our children have become and still miss the days when we were more central to their lives. Those feelings don't cancel each other out. I also think it's important to say that the empty nest isn't always a literal empty house. Sometimes the house is full, but the roles have changed. Our children may live nearby, but need less involvement. Distance may enter a relationship. Loss may change a family. Or life may simply move forward while a part of us tries to catch up. My experience of motherhood has changed many times over the years. Some of those changes were natural, and some were painful. I know what it's like to love someone deeply and also understand that I can't control the form that relationship takes. That has been one of the harder lessons of my life. Love doesn't always give us control, access, or the role we would choose. Sometimes it asks us to take a step back, accept, and keep living fully, even when life doesn't look the way we had hoped. But I don't want this conversation to feel as though this season is only about loss, because it isn't. It can also be a really interesting turning point. For perhaps the first time in years, we can ask the questions that aren't centered around someone else's needs. What do I enjoy? What am I curious about? What kind of life feels meaning to me now? Those questions may feel unfamiliar, but unfamiliar doesn't mean impossible. It simply means we haven't had much practice answering them. One fear beneath this transition is that we're no longer useful or necessary. But being necessary is not the same as having value. You do not have to be managing someone else's life in order for your own life to matter. The qualities you developed while caring for others haven't disappeared. You are still compassionate, resourceful, intuitive, creative, and capable. You still know how to listen, solve problems, and help people feel seen. Those gifts belong to you all along. Motherhood or caregiving gave you the one place to express them, but it was never meant to be the only place they could exist. Maybe your wisdom finds expression through mentoring, volunteering, creativity, friendship, or community. And maybe some nurturing energy gets redirected towards your own health, dreams, spiritual growth, or peace. This isn't selfish. It's actually a more balanced use of the love you already know how to give. We also don't need to rush towards one impressive new purpose. The word purpose can feel intimidating, as though we need a mission statement, a 5-year plan, and possibly a color-coded binder. Purpose can simply be what gives this season meaning. It can grow as you try new things. Notice what energizes you and reconnect with yourself. So where do we begin when we've spent so much time nurturing others that we aren't sure what we want anymore? I have a few suggestions, and none of them require you to reinvent your life by next Tuesday. The first is to let yourself have whatever feelings are actually present. You may feel lonely one day and relieved the next. You may miss the noise, then discover you enjoy drinking your coffee while it's still hot. You may feel proud, sad, excited, and peaceful, sometimes all in the same afternoon. You don't have to choose one official emotion. A transition can hold both grief and freedom. Missing what was doesn't mean you're refusing to move forward. And enjoying freedom doesn't mean you love anyone any less. Begin asking yourself small questions rather than expecting one enormous answer. What music do I like when no one else is in the car? How do I want to spend my Saturday morning? What brings me peace or makes me laugh? What have I been postponing? You might even make a list called things I might enjoy. Not things you must accomplish. Not a new set of obligations. Just possibilities. Maybe it includes gardening, a class, travel, writing, strength training, meditation, nature, joining a group, or reading simply because it interests you. There are no wrong answers, and nothing on the list has to become your new identity. Now, this one can be uncomfortable. I'd like you to notice when you step in too quickly when your adult children or others have a problem. Sometimes we're helping. Other times we may be grasping for the familiar feeling of being necessary. I know I personally struggle with this one. Before offering advice, can we pause and ask, do they want my help Or do they simply want me to listen? Am I supporting them, or am I trying to manage the outcome because it makes me feel more necessary? Letting people handle their own lives doesn't make us less loving. It allows the relationship to become more mutual. We can stay connected without always fixing something. And we can begin trusting that we are lovable for who we are, not only for what we do for everyone. Sometimes we put too much pressure on finding our new purpose that we become afraid to choose anything. Instead of asking, is this what I meant to do with the rest of my life? Ask, would I like to try this? If it feels aligned, take the class, attend the event, volunteer once, or start the project. If you don't enjoy it, you haven't failed, you've learned something. Sometimes we discover what we want by first discovering what we don't want. We often discover what we want through movement, not by demanding perfect clarity. A small choice can reveal the next one. Rediscovering yourself doesn't mean erasing motherhood or any other role that has mattered to you. It means allowing your identity to become larger than your role. You can still be a mother and a woman with interests, friendships, goals, creativity, and a spiritual life of her own. You can love your family without arranging your entire existence around being needed. And I think this is where our inner wisdom becomes so important. For years, we may have used our intuition on behalf of others, sensing what they needed and knowing when to encourage, protect, or step in. Now we can begin turning some of that awareness inward. What do I need? What feels aligned for me? What is draining me? What is calling my attention? What would support the woman I am becoming? The answers may not come all at once. That's okay. We are not late or starting from nothing. We're bringing everything we've learned into a different chapter. The years we spent nurturing others were not wasted. And this next season isn't an afterthought. There is still so much life left available, with more freedom, more wisdom, and self-awareness than we had when we were younger. So if you're in a season where you're feeling less needed, a little uncertain, or unsure what comes next, I want you to consider a different question. Instead of asking who I am if they don't need me, try asking, who am I free to become now? Not because you need to reject the woman you've been, but because there may be more of you waiting to be discovered. What would you like to explore simply because it interests you? How could you direct some nurturing energy towards yourself? What part of your identity may be ready to grow? You don't have to figure it all out today. You only need to become curious about yourself again. If this episode resonated, please share it with another woman navigating an empty nest or major life transition. Knowing we're not alone in asking these questions can make the journey easier. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the show. You can also join my newsletter and connect with me on Instagram for more conversations about healing, growth, and learning to trust the wisdom within you. Until next time, keep healing, keep growing, and keep uncovering your inner power.